first began to have interest in life after death, I became a writer in that area when I was, again, very young. And I think my first resource was victorzammit.com. That's V as in Victor, Victor Zammit, Zammit. And that guy, who's now an old friend of mine now, but he retired lawyer, kind of famous lawyer from Australia. I think he was Arnold Schwarzenegger's lawyer at one point. But anyway, he retired and committed his life to studying the afterlife. And so he had a website, it's like 40 areas of evidence for the afterlife. And his philosophy was, look, we can't take just one area and say that this is proof that we all survive death and go on to other worlds. But if you take all these areas of information, put them together, find the commonalities, then it makes a really compelling case of an afterlife. And so I was really into that stuff. And I didn't even have my first astral projection experiences until 2014. So many years down the line. But I was heavily involved learning about like materializations, near-death experiences, physical mediumship, direct voice mediumship, death, after-death contacts, deathbed visitations, of course, remote viewing. There's xenoglossy, which is when someone is born with the ability to speak a language mysteriously. Like imagine, you have a baby and then Johnny's first words are in Mandarin. That's something. Or reincarnation research, Ian Stevenson's work, incidences in afterlife studies like the skull experiments. There was an extraordinary documentary about that. Many more areas, laboratory experiments with spirits. I talk about that. I talk about some of that in my first book. So, of course, my first book was Understanding Life After Death. And so Understanding Life After Death was kind of the synthesis of all my research into these areas, right? And so, and also basically presenting a case kind of in the style of Victor Zammit, when he first made his website, about why we should recognize the afterlife as a real part of life. And then a big part of that, like the first book and some of that work, was dispelling myths. So the first thing I noticed that was really bugging me, especially as I began creating communities, creating like the Facebook group and all of this, was that like the New Age movement, which has kind of had a monopoly on this information since, I don't know, the 70s or the 80s. They tend to, like, there's almost like these orthodoxies that restricts what we're capable of doing in other dimensions, other planes of existence. So you'll hear them, you'll hear these, these channelers on YouTube and some of these aging symbols of that field going on like, oh, there's no sex, once you die, you become a non-physical orb of light. You can't touch people. You can't have romantic relationships. You're going to be worshiping at the foot of God forever. There's like some theological interpretation. Really annoying. And, but now realizing that this was the perspective people had, I started to get pushback on my own work. It's like, yes, Cyrus, you're talking about, going out of your body and having all these physical experiences and being in another world, but you can't do that because freaking so-and-so channeler says that, you can't have a physical body anymore. You can't do physical things. You can't smell and taste things, all these weird restrictions, right? And so that became kind of a big theme of my first book, is I want to like dispel some of those ideas. Then later on, I did a follow-up book, The Afterlife and Beyond. I've kept the community going. So that's a little bit of a background about the books, where I'm coming from, how some of this got started. So I'll go ahead and switch into talking more about my experiences and some of my my path along those lines. So, as I said, I didn't actually begin meeting concept with reality and having my own experiences until about 2014. So my first experience, and I actually have the whole experience that I talk about kind of recently on my YouTube channel. I broke it down. So my first experience was unexpected, didn't make any sense. I don't even, still don't know why it happened, because there wasn't a trigger. Besides, maybe there was some outside force that just pulled me out of my body one morning. But that's what happened. I took a nap, And I soon found myself floating above my body and seeing my astral body in the mirror in my bedroom. And I was just like floating around there, like, quite awkward looking. I noticed at that point it was kind of strange because I was asleep in a red shirt and like sweatpants, and of course now I'm still wearing the red shirt and sweatpants, so it's like it duplicated my clothing. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. But then something just kept pulling me up until I was in the attic of the house I was renting, and then it just kept pulling me up more. And then suddenly I was in a field with like thistles and grass, and there was this big like Roman style temple, like marble columns, that was like not too far away. There were people coming in and out of this temple. And at this point, it's really easy to just lose your shit because suddenly it's not like, oh, I'm dreaming about this place. It's like I'm physically here right now. I just duplicated myself into this other world, and I can freaking touch the grass, and I can feel all the splinters from all these dry shrubs all around me. So it's like, wow, I'm actually physically in a different world. I'm like, I know what's going on. The thought crossed my mind, maybe I was dead, but regardless, I ended up like just walking down a road kind of aimlessly, and I met up with these two. I saw these two people coming toward me on the road, and they were Eastern Indian, so they're really, really good looking. Like look like I think they might have been husband and wife, maybe they were brother and sister, but they looked like they came out of some Bollywood film set. And I had a mental collapse at this point because it was too much to take in. So I was just kind of like on my knees, and I was just losing it. And so this guy came up to me and like patted me on the back. It's like, look, you're having an out of body experience right now. You're doing what they call astral projection. And from here on out, you're going to have this ability. And I was kind of like, how do I know this is real? And I'm not just tripping out. How do I know that this isn't some kind of big hallucination? He's like, look, you're always going to have a connection back to your body. If you're doing this, you're always going to have to second guess, is this real or is it not real? But you're never going to be completely here until after you're dead. He said, like, once you die, you will gain the full access to this world. Until that time comes, and until you actually die, you'll be able to visit this place, get information, get ideas that you can take back and share with people. But let me tell you something, once you die and you're actually here, it's the best feeling in the world because you'll be fully here and you'll realize it's no different than where you are right now. And so he picked up the dirt with his hand, and he's like, you'll see it's like real, and this is a real and solid place. And I think he was like emphasizing that to me because a lot of people have the impression that it's not a real and solid place, that it is a some kind of thought construct or a dream reality. Or sometimes we get that idea because we have dreams like penetrating into our astral experiences, and then we get the wrong interpretation that it is some kind of a fictitious world. So I think I actually think that the guy wanted me to have that message so I could take it back with people. So basically that experience ended. There was some more that happened. Like his wife said a couple of jokes. There was some banter. I have all that down in my journal someplace. But anyway, that experience ended. And so I think at that point I went from like being an afterlife kind of like researcher on the amateur level, just writing and being interested in stuff, to realizing, oh my God, everything I've read about is real. I just had like a real experience. And so from that point onward, I began having OBEs, astral trips about every week. And so that was 2014. Like up until maybe last year, my abilities have dropped ever since I got COVID. Go figure. I came down like the long haul COVID syndrome. I still have issues every day with it. And it's made it much more difficult to have experiences. And I'm hoping eventually, if there's enough dieting and kind of exercise, getting my health back, I'll be able to kind of get back into the swing of things again. But basically up until last year, probably experiences every week. So I do have a lot of other experiences besides that one. One that I was going to talk about in the channel that comes to my mind was Astral London. And so, one of the things I came to discover was that this whole planet has an astral equivalent on the astral frequency. Maybe to use terminology from a book like The Law of One, you could say this is the fourth density version of this planet, but it's still kind of in concept. It looks the same or is the same layout as this world is. So what I began to discover is that, like, if I was in Los Angeles and going out of my body, I was in the astral version of my neighborhood, populated by, different people. The houses are kind of in the same positions, but things look kind of different. The house that I'm living in is the same house, but maybe a little bit different. But with London, I found myself, going to sleep, kind of, having the intention to go out of my body or doing some of my techniques, and then I would just like wake up in a different environment. So that different environment would be in one situation, kind of like staying in a hostel or like a multi-bed location with other tourists. And, like I woke up in this foreign bed in a foreign city, finding out that it was in fact London. And what I ended up doing there was there was this entire, like, I don't know, like I want to say theme park, but that's not the correct word. It's more like replication of the whole Harry Potter universe. Now, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan. I know some people think I am. Maybe I look like I am, but I like Harry Potter. I'm not like crazy about Harry Potter, but I was into this, right? So I went ahead and partook in the whole Harry Potter experience. And it's like there's that whole like like you go through you go into the pillar at the tube station, and you end up into the Harry Potter realm. What is that, like Metro 9.5 or whatever that was? I don't remember. And you can then participate in that whole world. And so what I ended up participating in was an actual like a magic class. So we were all given wands, and this was going to be like our first class in learning how to do magic. And the first spell that we were learning was a very basic one. The idea is that you take all these candles and they're all unlit. So you go into the classroom, you're with your other students, and they put all the candles around, and you have to learn. And there's a special like magic phrase that you have to say, and you have to move the wand a certain way, and you have to like channel that ability. But the first spell that you learn is that the wand will fly out of your hand, and it will go to all the candles and light all of them. Right, so that was the first test for the first spell, and I remember failing it a lot, and then finally kind of getting it right. But it was a long, kind of arduous process, because we had to go through each student trying to get it right, so that they cast the spell correctly. The wand flies out of your hand and lights all the candles. And the teacher was middle-aged guy. He didn't look like a wizard or so. He looked like he looked like just some normal dude. He didn't really look like he was dressed to the part. He looked like a typical professor with like maybe 50 or 60, kind of graying, normal guy. And so I was doing that for a while. I don't have all my memories of what that evolved into, but pretty fun. So then there were some more things that happened, of course, in that situation. They're in my notes someplace. So I think that was really interesting. One of the more fun experiences. And then, I've had obviously a lot of other experiences, a lot of things that you can't define as well as I could define, like, oh, I'm going into the Harry Potter world that's in London that everyone goes to as their astral tourists. I've had like experiences in strange, unidentifiable places. I remember one time I was in like I woke up on the astral plane, and so I found that like my astral parallel self, who seems to operate autonomously from Earth Cyrus, and what I'm doing when I'm projecting is I'm kind of tapping into his consciousness. But I was checked into some kind of hotel. It's a really beautiful hotel. And I'm like, you jump into that consciousness. You don't know where you are. You don't know what's happening. And I look around. I try to get information. I try to, piece together where I am. And then in this case, like I went to the window and stepped out to the balcony, and I was on some kind of like a thin ocean, you know, like a shallow. It was like a hotel. I think it was on like stilts, and it was in this thin ocean, and it really seemed like some other world. What I noticed is that there were like multiple moons, and there was this like rusty metal like constructions everywhere. Like it looked like old ruins of something that used to be there. And then there was a very large creature kind of like walking around in the water, which I would define as looking like a dragon, but it was very like sluggish. You know, it's kind of like a dragon on weed or something. I don't know, but there was this big I guess it was like a native species, and I think part of why I was there was to observe these huge dragons because they were interesting. You know, so I was, you know, I think maybe that's why you were there. You know, maybe I was dragon watching. I don't know, but it was some kind of other world, and it by the sense like I was very sad. Like it was the ruins of a civilization, and now people just go there to like look at it and explore. But whoever and whatever they were is long gone. So that was an interesting experience. And then, of course, you know, I've had a lot of experiences. So the most important experiences to me is going to go back to the life after death angle. So it's one thing to have some adventure in all this. You know, this is to go back to what I said at the beginning. You know, that's great. But as you get older, as you lose loved ones, that becomes your priority is like, do I see my pets again? Do I see my parents again? So my mom passed away in 2016. She was very active astrally for the first few months. And so I could go to sleep at night, and then she'd just pop into this reality by my bed, and I'd be a little bit out of my body so I could talk to her, and then we'd just chat for like an hour, right? I attended like orientation sessions with her, so there would be like there was this big like cabin like area, almost it was like in the woods. It was like a big camp, and so my mom would attend these classes with other people who recently died. And so we'd all sit, you know, in this cabin, in these chairs, and we'd listen to the presenter talking about like what's different in the astral world from the world you're in now, what to expect, you know, what abilities do you have now that you never had, all of these types of things. And so I'm part of, because I already knew so much about the other side from my studies, like I was trying to help my mom understand these things as well. So like I was there helping teach my mom how to be dead. Right. And then my mom was coming back, giving me feedback about her experiences and what those differences were. You know, like she was like, yeah, I went swimming in the pond, and I got out, I was already dry. I was automatically dry. And also there were no like insects biting me. So it's like, it's all, you know, so she had these experiences and she was bringing them back to me. And then I was talking to her. And similarly, you know, I talked to my brother. My father a bit, not as much, but he's around. And then also had pets that I've been able to speak in English to. You know, it's strange when you have a horse, you know, and then you're having a conversation with him, or a pet cat. You know, I have had those things happen. And then the most common experience on that note that I've had has been just being in the old family house. So this is something a lot of people experience, is that like they have a house that they grew up with, and they find that it's basically replicated itself on the astral side. So you're in the same house you grew up in. So most of my experiences is I'm just back in the house, looking around, looking to see if my parents or anybody are home. Maybe no one's home. Maybe I just like, you know, look around, be like, cool, and then the experience ends. And that's probably the most common experience I do have. The crazy adventures, haven't had them as common lately, but a lot of those back in the 2016, 2017 era, I guess. And so, you know, to kind of, I guess, put a full stop on everything. You know, all that's combined with the community. So I made the Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics YouTube channel. And a lot of that's like pulling apart the concepts of other dimensions, what it's like living in those places, how, you know, trying to build a little bit of a relationship between this world and that world, and trying to provide education about how it all works in a more accurate way. And so I've been making 2 or 3 videos a week since about late 2018. So the channel has a zillion topics on it. We have interviews with guests, and we're just trying to pull apart the information and stay realistic about it. I often try to, or I try to emphasize the points, or actually try to dispel a lot of like what I think, in my opinion, are myths, myths that cause anxiety, myths that make people more scared. Like, for example, I get all the soul trap stuff. I get there's validity behind some of that, but people going out and trying to scare people, saying that it's all an illusion, your loved ones are like archons deceiving you, and a lot of that stuff is, in my opinion, manipulation. Like, these are real other worlds. Your consciousness is infinite. Nothing has full power over your consciousness unless you surrender that. You have the freedom to go where you want to go. If you're not going where you want to go, this might be a personal hang up that you can overcome. We have basically infinite possibilities. The multiverse is infinite. Other people say like, oh, the afterlife is a temporary place, and then you have to reincarnate. You have no choice but to come back here. You got some of these new agey authors, like the Rob Schwartzes and Neil Donald Walsh. Some of these guys, they say, Michael Newton. It's like, you go to the other side for like a week, and then you have no choice but to come back to this crummy planet. I don't know what the motivations are for like saying these types of lies to people, but in my experience, I don't think that those are accurate perceptions of, if the multiverse is infinite, logically, why are we forced to have to reincarnate? Or why do people push that narrative? I don't know. But no dead person I've ever talked to, because again, I talked, one of the big things, I didn't even touch on this. I'll wrap up soon and go to questions, but one of the things that I do is, if I'm astral projecting, I'm trying to go at this from a journalistic point of view, right? So my first priority usually is, if I see another person, I want to go up to them. I want to ask them, like, what's your name? How do you remember how you got here? Do you remember if you had a life on Earth? Do you have any way to, like, I might ask them if they had a life on Earth, or if they died, what their identity is. If they had like a social media page, I could verify their existence. And so I automatically just do this, right? Or I ask them questions. It's like, are you able to do X, Y, Z here? Or whatever the case might be. And mind you, it's worked twice where I've been able to get info from people. One time I found someone's whole like Facebook obituary, matched all his info and where he was too. He passed away. I also was able to find the obituary information about a guy in the U.S. Marine Corps who passed away, somebody else I met. So that actually does work if you do it. And that's something, if you astral project, that I really recommend doing to make to prove your experiences. But, in all these types of like interviews I do, I'll ask things like, do you have to reincarnate? Do you know what reincarnation is? Do you have to come back to Earth? Basically, people I meet astrally, they're like, I've never known anyone who's reincarnated. It sounds terrifying. I don't want to reincarnate, and I don't know what's going on with that. Oftentimes, they're as clueless as we are, and they're living their full lives on that side. And the common thing I hear is like, yeah, I mean, if you're from the Earth plane, you're conscious right now, I gotta tell you, your world sounds horrible. One guy was telling me it sounds like living hell. To be trapped where you are. So so that to me is a more accurate way of finding these things out. Not that I'm saying reincarnation doesn't exist. I just think it happens multidimensionally. So you're looking at yourself as like one facet of a diamond, and then your higher self, your oversoul, if you will, which you might be connected to all these spokes. And some of those branch off, it seems like, and reincarnate. And then you can get access to your higher consciousness, and you can become aware of all those other lives reincarnating. But the idea that you individually have no, you die, you go to that side, you have to wait in the queue, and you get thrown back into another body, I kind of reject that. So that's one thing I reject. Also, all that stuff about like we become non-physical orbs of light floating around, and you don't have access to anything. You can't eat food and all these. Like, I reject all that too. So ultimately, I guess to summarize, the life after death angle is a big thing with me. I do the journalistic approach to trying to understand what people's lives are like on that side. And I try to pull this apart and provide some pushback, even from my tiny little community and readers, and comparatively speaking to some of the big authors out there. If it's a little bit of pushback against both kind of the New Age movement, but also the materialism establishment, and that's a big plus too. That's pretty much the most I can do, the most I can hope for. With that said, I'll bring it on. I'll take it back to the admin, and happy to answer questions and all that. So that concludes my presentation or whatever. I didn't rehearse this. I'm just going ad lib. So whatever this was, that concludes it.
Well, we appreciate it as always, Cyrus. I mean, from what I've heard over the years of you speaking kind of on YouTube and bringing other projectors together, this is great, especially for new people who haven't heard you before. I think you're way too humble, considering. I mean, I've listened to your I guess interviews, if you would, on let's say I think it was Do Not Die Radio a couple times you were on there, and a few others. And I have to say, having listened to some of those channels and podcasts with dozens and dozens of other guests, your stories are truly extraordinary. I think you don't give yourself enough credit for just how extraordinary some of your experiences have been. You don't know me, perhaps, in my experiences. I've got probably upwards of 30 years myself of experience. But what's so interesting about hearing about your experiences, you give yourself only credit for a few years, but in that short amount of time, the amount of experiences and the quality of the experiences that you've had are really extraordinary from an astral projection standpoint. And that's why it's such a kind of a gift for all of us to be able to come together like this and kind of share these stories. But what I think might benefit some folks who haven't heard before, you kind of flirted with the story about your mom, and her passing, and then you being able to exchange kind of information and ideas with her on the other side. But I really think, especially with how the kind of physical mediumship played in at the end, I really think it would benefit a lot of people here to just hear, maybe as briefly as you can tell it, that kind of story of what led you, especially with the hospital. You know where I'm going with that. So I just think a lot of people who haven't heard that story before would really benefit from hearing that.
Okay, so I can talk about, so the hospital type of experience, but real quick though, how was it, what was the physical mediumship angle?
I didn't want to spoil it just because that's kind of like a punchline for people with the way you told it. When I don't know if it's physical mediumship or how you would define it, but that nurse or that individual that you talked to who was a psychic medium, maybe.
Oh, okay, I got you. I understand. I had to jog my memory a little bit. It's funny because maybe you're all right by being too humble, because I think of that story and think, well, that one's kind of boring. What else can I tell? Maybe it's not. So my mom. So one of the things, and this is something people, of course, have issues with, if it's in the philosophical contentions area, because some people want to say when you die, you become your higher self and all your problems are wiped clean. This even goes into like the area, the areas that I really don't agree with about, you can be a horrible person in this world and you get a blank slate. All the information, probably going back, I don't know, thousands of years, tells us that that's not the case. You die, you bring with you all your regrets, all of your non-biological, non-chemical based mental issues, unfortunately. So a lot of us have depression and problems related to brain issues and chemical imbalances. I know exactly what that feels like, and I'm aware of that. But if you have like a purely psychological issue, a regret and problems, it can lead you into a dark state of mind. You can even end up in darker planes of existence. And so when my mom passed away, well, she basically passed away from alcoholism, and she had a lot of baggage, a lot of problems. And there was the goal of the people meeting her on that side to not let her descend into like a negative environment, which, like they were trying to save her from that, save her from herself. So she ended up in this hospital, and basically that was my first experience of seeing her on that side, is that she was basically in a big white hospital room. And, I appeared there and I met up there, these nurses, and they were wearing these, I guess you would call 1940s style nurse outfits. If you have to Google it to see what it looks like, they were kind of like red colored uniforms. Pretty much got to Google a 1940s style nurse outfit. So I met up with her nurse, And I'm like, can I see my mom? And she's like, you can see her, but you have to understand, like, her state of mind is changing the environment around her, because this is what can happen with a physically fluid environment like the astral. So if you have a really strong enough thought, it can manifest itself, which is cool and also slightly terrifying. So I went to see my mom, and sure enough, she was on a bed, and she was really angry that she felt like the hospital staff had abused her, or they were doing painful things to her. And so she was like producing hospital equipment like out of her head, like scalpels and the feeding tube that she was on. Like she was making it all appear like coming out of her body, for that matter, like really disturbing and kind of gross. And I was terrified, and in some ways I'm like all her mental stuff and anger and issues, like it was all manifesting this way. It was very disturbing. And so all I could do is really talk to her and try to get her to recognize what happened. And she of course came through, and nowadays she's doing okay. But really sad about that. But I did talk to this nurse for a while. I'd have to go back to the notes of the old interviews to get what we were talking about. But I got her name. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get her name, but I got her. I remember I saw her physical features, what she looked like, and all of this. So later on, I had a reading with Suzanne Wilson. She's one of the real mediums out there who is really phenomenal. Good luck booking with her, because she costs like $500. You have to wait 2 years. But somebody booked me in right away to her, which I actually, if I recall, it was Roberta Grimes. And she gifted me this reading with Suzanne Wilson. I've been on Roberta's show like 5 times. So I was in my truck at the time. I would go, on my phone talking to Suzanne, and she came up with all this stuff. There's no way anyone could know about, right? And so one of the things that popped into her mind is like, I'm seeing this 1940s style nurse, and she's like, her name is, I don't remember what it was. I don't have an elephant's memory, but it's in my notes, or it might be in that interview. But it was like, let's say it's Deborah, right? So she's like, I'm seeing this nurse, and she's taking care of your mom, and she's dressed in this exact way I saw her, and she looks like the exact way I saw her. Her name is Deborah, and she's coming through to let you know about how your mom is doing. So that was an example. There's quite a few examples like that, of like having an experience on the other side, and then a medium, like a psychic medium. Actually, psychic medium is the wrong term. Just a medium is able to confirm the experience as it happened that no one else would have known about. So I've had that happen, other times with other mediums, but that was a good one. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Cyrus. I'm not going to take the whole stage 4. I'm sure plenty of people have questions, so we'll open it up. If maybe it'll make it easier if everybody wants to either type in their question or type in their name, and we'll try to go in order here and try not to take all of Cyrus's evening or afternoon.
And if I'm distracted for a second, I'm recording this in OBS, and it's going to run out of space soon. So I'm semi-frantically looking for looking for something to delete so that I can have access to it. Let's see. I'll delete this, and this. There we go. Goodbye.
That's quite all right. We've got a couple of questions being typed out, and I'll be happy to voice them just to make it easier. I see that there was a question earlier. I didn't want to skip over anyone, but nobody says, I noticed that my current experience with meditation, or when trying to have an OBE, it seemed that I know I'm not my mind. I am more and more easily able to step away from my mind and merely observe it. I understand deeply that these thoughts have to appear to something, but I still seem to buy into the idea that I am the body, because I get more and more experience of dissociation, having vivid daydream visions, 3D imagination, but I still experience from the standpoint of the physical body. Maybe I'm using the physical body standpoint to compare with the other experience, so I never fully get the AP experience, no matter how crazy vivid and quite visual everything in my imagination seems. I don't go there fully in my AP. So it sounds like he's experiencing some friction there, so you might want to elaborate or...
Yeah. Well, look, this is going to be really controversial. Sometimes certain Eastern philosophies can actually hurt AP abilities because there's certain, for example, in Buddhism, you're recommended to avoid going out of your body, avoid having an astral projection experience, because all that matters is you enter like a high level of meditation, and you're supposed to even resist having an experience. So I bring that up because sometimes certain ways of thinking cause certain blocks, right? So, for example, if you're completely just trying to transcend everything, that might actually make it difficult to AP, because when you AP, it's not that you are, completely no longer your body. What's doing, you're shifting into an astral body. If you don't have the astral body, you can't interact in an astral environment. And the astral body is pretty tied to your physical body. So much that even like if you can heal your astral body, it can affect your physical body. So, so part of the trick with APing is to make it more of a physical experience and not less. And so what I mean by that is, if I go out of my body in my bedroom and I'm in my astral body, it'll feel as solid as the body I'm in right now. And that's when I know that I can take that with me and have a full experience on the other side, being fully there. Sometimes I'm just floating around as an orb of consciousness, right? But sometimes I'm in the fully materialized astral body. And I think what's needed in some ways is to focus back on like the physical process of leaving your body, which would mean going to the vibrations, feeling that energetic disconnect happening in your body, which you'll feel it as like electrical tingly sensations kind of traveling up and down your body. Realizing you're disconnected, pulling yourself out of your body, recognizing your astral body, verifying that you're in it, and then proceeding to have an experience from there.
This is where I get blocked.
I'm sorry?
This is where I get blocked. You explain very well the vibration stage. This is usually where I'm at, and I could be like in vibration stage for like 2 hours until I reach a point I'm like, okay, I had enough, and I just know that nothing else is going to happen. So the pulling out of the body part that I don't quite master yet. And usually what's going to happen, I'm just going to get exhausted, even though those vibrations, feelings are nice, and I can just chill there for a while and not be angry about not being able to AP and just relax. But after a while, I'll just say, okay, I had enough. The body's really heavy and you just want to move. Or the other thing that could happen is that, I forgot my last part, but I'm not able to, I just remember it. The other things that might happen in my situation is that I'm going to move my body in order to actually get out of my body to get to pull apart. So I'm going to move my actual physical body and ruin the vibration stage, and resetting the back to zero.
Yeah, I mean, what you want is to get like a kind of motor function of your astral body. So if you're sitting on top of vibrations, you need to just try to move your astral hand. So that's the goal. Right, so you want to make sure it's your astral hand that lifts up, and that's not your normal hand. It's hard to almost explain because it happens normally for me. So that's good, but also keep in mind this is almost for having the out of body experience in your bed. The other part of this is having that connection when you're asleep and turning a dream state into an astral state. Kind of sounds like you have some ability with this already. I feel like it's almost like the more grounded you are in your astral body and the more aware you are of how these processes take place, it's easier to turn the dream state into an objective experience, because that is the challenge is you don't necessarily want to be having an experience that's inside of your imagination. That will create lucid dreaming, which is great. You can create worlds and fly around and do stuff, but everyone you meet are going to be NPCs. Right. It's NPCs. Yeah, they're fun. You can make them do whatever you want. and you can program them and you can hang out with them and they seem real, but it's not real. It's not meaningful. What the aim of the astral projector is to be in a consensus environment that's shared by real people, or else, and this is something I think a lot of us learn even as we're getting older, life is not that meaningful unless you share it with real people. I know some people, they want to live as a hermit their whole lives, but even if you're having lucid dreaming, it's not sustainable, because the memories aren't like, I would have a more meaningful memory in this world going bowling with a couple friends than I would, being in a lucid dream state and doing anything that, having all that adventure. You can lucid dream with real people too. They can come into your dream, but the goal is to get away from the imagination and get back to objective reality. And then use the imagination as a tool, but don't fall into it. I think that's a big point that people should recognize in, who do AP. But anyway, hope that helped.
Yeah, I guess I interpreted that part like being like a sign of progress in order to AP. So the lucid dream state you describe, I have it every night, but apparently so when I meditate, because I'm fully awake, but then I have this lucid dream experience, and I think I'm doing something right in order to AP. But maybe if I understand what you're saying, it's playing against me instead of because now I want to stay in that state instead of
you want to be able to dispel the dream and find out if there's an astral state underneath it. Sometimes the astral state is you on the astral plane, walking around, sleepwalking in a dream state, even in your bedroom, in your astral body. And so you want to try to dispel the dream, affirmations, whatever it takes, and then get back to an astral experience that might be happening underneath it. But maybe that might help. I do want to open up to anyone else too. I have 20 or 30 minutes left.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I also get to everybody who has questions. And so let's go ahead and.
Yeah, we have some additional questions. If maybe I'll make it go quicker for you, Cyrus. Are you in the text to voice chat? I don't know if you can see it right now.
Text to voice chat.
I can voice all the questions to make it easier, but I figured maybe if you just read them off really quick.
I'm just a little bit rusty with Discord. Let me just look. Oh, I see text to voice. So I should just, if I click that, it's not going to make me leave the live event, will it?
Nope, it's just an additional something you can view while we're chatting.
Good. Okay, yeah, I am here now. Let's see.
I think we're myth and then N after myth. That's where we are as far as the questions go. Myth is asking, have you read The Law of One? And
okay, so Myth says, have you read The Law of One? The answer is yes, I have read The Law of One. I reference it frequently in the video, so just as a frame of reference to handle a number of topics. I don't usually put a lot of faith behind some random bloke says they're channeling an alien, but it just so happens the content, which is really difficult to read, and the raw dude who wrote the book needs to take some classes in English language and slang and how to write in a way that is able to be inclusive and all that. So it's so unfortunately the book has some issues with this, but when you drill down, the material is really important, I think. So I do recommend The Law of One, as well as other important channeled books. That includes Silver Birch. The Seth material is pretty good. Manuel Swedenborg's works. What else? I would recommend Anthony Borgia's channeled works, and then The Law of One as well.
Perfect. And asks, I guess it's a two-parter question. Says, I have never AP'd, would like to know what you do to enter the astral, and what's the most interesting thing you have seen or heard in the astral?
Well, AP, but I don't know what to enter that. Well, of course, there's a zillion resources. It's a personal journey for a lot of people. It's sometimes why, my part-time thing, sometimes I do coaching for astral projection, because sometimes it's an individual thing. There's variables. Like if someone's never had a dream before, I've coached people on that spectrum, and it's going to be a more difficult challenge. It's like their connection is like there's some serious blockage happening. Some people, they dream every night. It means that they're getting information coming in from some, or maybe that side. It's going to be easier for them to have experiences. But if you've never AP'd before, try messing up your sleep cycle. So if you always go to sleep at 12 a.m., you wake up at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., sleep a little bit less, and then try taking a 2-hour nap at 12 o'clock p.m. and set an intention that you're going to have an experience. Be excited about it, even if it's not sure what the experience is, and possibly make sure you're in a quiet place where you can sleep. But then set like a soft alarm, something like music playing very softly, something to try to wake your consciousness up while your body is asleep, because that's the springboard, is sleep paralysis or waking your mind up while your body is asleep. That's how you can have experiences. So you want to focus on at least on that level for now. And also the second part, what is the most interesting thing you've seen or heard? Well, I mean, at the beginning, I put down 3 stories that were definitely interesting. It's not really even that possible to put like what is the most interesting thing I've seen or heard. Like the most interesting or weird experience was probably the occultist, who I don't necessarily condone, Aleister Crowley, becoming interested in my work and my books and pulling me out of my body and visiting me in my bedroom. That was a little bit weird. I would definitely rank that high on the interesting / weird scale. So I guess that answers your question.
Yeah, I remember that story as well, Cyrus. It is a great one, so people should check that out on YouTube if they haven't seen that one.
I don't even know if I ever put it on YouTube. I write it out in my first book, and I'm going to put it on YouTube eventually. I have a new series on our new playlist, which is Astral Projection Stories, and so eventually I'll put it up there. But yeah, that was
what's your channel called?
Channel is called Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics.
So the next question, actually, I have an answer for too, and it's that I put my tongue up against my top teeth, but I'm sure you've heard this one a million times, Cyrus. How do you stop compulsively swallowing?
Compulsively swallowing. By having your body asleep or paralyzed and having it's going through its automatic functions. And if you are swallowing, it means that, maybe you should be focusing more on just going to sleep, but then waking your mind up while your body is asleep. I don't AP through meditation. Like I usually AP through sleep paralysis. Or sleep paralysis, or I just appear on that side. So some people AP through meditation. The great Jürgen Ziva, who some people say maybe he's kind of like my mentor. If you haven't seen his book is Multidimensional Man. He is he projects through meditation. Maybe his work has some insight about that, but since I never have the issue of like swallowing or having an itch and all that kind of thing, if that makes sense.
That's good. I'm looking at the next question. What are your thoughts about? Well, I know you talk about this all the time. What are your thoughts about when dying, we go back to the light and love, to our true home, like when NDEs share their experience? And I'm an NDE experiencer myself, and so I understand exactly where they're coming from.
It's a good question. It's a common debate. I just wanted to also real quick, because I see in the chat some other questions about like Unplug the Matrix. I don't know if you are the Unplug the Matrix who comments on the YouTube a lot, so hello. So I'll get to that after. Okay, so first I'll ask about answer about the near-death experience. Well, what is the divine light? What is that feeling of love? And logically, is it a permanent state of existence? Because that's where I think NDEers, even themselves, get mixed up. Because it's not an existence of growth, experience, adventure, if the whole afterlife is floating around in a sea of white light and love, and then waiting to reincarnate. That it would kind of be an antithesis to what God would actually want. So the question is, when does the experience with your higher self and, what I think is happening, let me just cut myself off, is that people die, they're in a bad state of mind, they feel unloved, they feel out of touch with the universe. And I think it's a goal of guides and higher dimensional beings to try to prevent people from ending up on the lower spectrum, ending up in a bad situation. And so I think people get sent into this experience with the universe, with love, with God, so that they can go back into a positive, high vibration state of mind. And then that will allow them, when that experience is over, to go back into the astral and not be at risk like my mom was. Not end up in a hospital, not end up, in that dark situation. So I think that's what's going on, is that, you get that experience with the light, with the higher self, with God. You get these uploads of info. And then presumably if the NDE lasted beyond that point, you'd end up on the astral plane with everyone else who's dead. And also there's a lot of NDEs that just skip into the astral plane. Like I talked to John Davis on my channel a few weeks ago. His NDE, there was no light or tunnel. He popped up in a city with a library, and he was given a tour of the other side and all this fun stuff. And so he talks about that whole experience. So that's my interpretation. There's it's like a semi-religion around the tunnel, the light, and all this kind of stuff, which is like, oh, the afterlife. Like, I can't wait till I merge back with the light and become the light again. Well, you don't actually want that. You want to be on a soul level. You want to be what you've been created as, and you want to have experiences, and you want to go off and be able to have a lifestyle again, even if there's a core of us that is connected to the higher self, and there is that, state of pure love. Ultimately, I'd again recommend probably Jürgen's books to go deeper into these ideas, because Jürgen has been to the uppermost, highest spectrum of dimensions, even beyond where people go with NDEs. And then he's been back down to like nuts and bolts astral, astral apartment blocks. So you have like that big spectrum of experience.
Yeah, and as an NDE survivor, I can safely say, Cyrus, you're right. A lot of the NDE people, for your edification, a lot of NDE they do get confused with that. But we got a couple of more questions. One is, do you think it would be possible that many people astral project to the same place at the same time, can set attention to fight, let's say, coronavirus, engage in astral unification, and generate in this way a lot of thought energy which impacts physical worlds and quits the pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think extraterrestrials do this kind of thing like it's nobody's business. I think the reason that we're so non-advanced as a species is we haven't figured out how to do it. So it's why it's really important when there are groups, 100,000 people who are interested in these things, that it should be practiced to do collective consciousness, collective remote viewing, AP, intention, collective meditation, and, to fight back against these things and to improve humanity. So consciousness can do all that. There's the experiments that show mass meditation, lowering violent crime rates globally. So there is that connected global consciousness that can happen. As for AP, if a lot of people set the intention and want to do it, there's no reason that everyone can't AP to the same place and have that experience. It's just that, there's so many forces pushing against us when we AP, random forces, places that we end up in because of other things we're doing on that side already, subconscious forces. It's really difficult for people to focus their thoughts into one place. I can't do it. I'm not the best APer alive. There's a lot of people much better than me who can do that. They're like, I'm gonna go AP and I'm gonna go to this location. And they can do that. There's people in this group who are way more talented than I am who have that ability. So especially if you get people on that advanced level together, you could probably get them all to come to one place. But even if you're not advanced, you can do meditation. You can do like different intention type based practices to, for example, fight the pandemic, fight evil forces. We all got to do that. And the pandemic's a nasty one because the COVID is some kind of an energy virus. People on the astral side have been getting it. Of course, they don't die from it, but it's jacked up my body and done crazy things to my brain. I'm not saying that it was made for that purpose, but maybe it was, because even people I've talked to on the astral side, you know, they don't like COVID either. They're aware of how it's messing with people really bad, and it's messed with me really bad. I've seen healers on the astral side doing like spinal compression work and things like that on me, trying to get it out of my body. Still hasn't worked. So yeah, if we can come together for that, then that's good. People think, oh, COVID, I get the sniffles and it's gone from my body. That's not what they're discovering now. They're discovering it's like gluing itself into your body and your organs, and causing all these weird effects. So yeah, anything that can be done to fight that would be good.
And we've got another great question. Pawn Sacrifice says, Cyrus, what are your personal favorite ways to ground yourself into the experience and increase your focus when you first exit?
Personal favorite ways to ground my experience, increase my focus when I first exit. Right. So I think there's a level of just practice involved with mindfulness meditation. And so what you want to do with mindfulness is take any object, feel like you're one with it, and then feel like the love coming out of it. So, okay, so I have these tangled earphones, you know. Can I be one with these earphones? Are these earphones part of me? I am also the plastic in the earphones, and I appreciate the intent, the divine intent of what the earphones are designed to do, to carry auditory information to me. You know, like the mindfulness is being able to be part of things around you. And I'm not that good at it, to be honest. But if you can practice that, then you do that as soon as you're projecting, so that you're not thinking about stuff, panicking about things, or staying glued to your body. So you're staying, if the longer you can stay in the moment, the longer you can keep the AP experience going. That's why so many people who AP, I mean, they're more advanced than the people on that side living there, right? An APer who can successfully do that and be on that side, we're often able to fly around and have all these crazy abilities. And the average residents of the astral plane are like, look at that guy up there, you know, some guy, you know, who must be someone from Earth who can like cross dimensions. So, you know, it is a special privilege to be able to do AP, because when you get really good at like being in that moment and having, you know, those abilities, then, you know, you have the ability to cut through dimensions. And that's the main practice. Whereas again, even people on that side don't necessarily have that ability.
That's great. And Lancer asks, what's the most real life experience you can have in OBE during an OBE? Can I read a book from real life, for example? So what's the most physical life?
Yeah, so you can. And this is, again, where it comes down to the clarity of the experience, because sometimes the AP experience is being muddied by your brain and dreams. And of course, when you're dreaming, you can't read things or something like that, because I think it's like your right lobe is not activated very well. Maybe it's your left lobe, but you know, if you trying to read and process information in a dream, it's very difficult, or the text is all jumbled and you're not able to get objective information back. And sometimes that bleeds into an AP experience and you can't really focus on things easily. But if you have a more pure AP experience, you can. So in AP experiences, I have read books, I've watched TV. I remember one time, I mentioned this a long time ago, there was a film I was watching with my mom, who I'd never seen the film on this side. It was not a really great film. I think it was called like Hail Caesar with George Clooney. I think he's like an actor in the 40s or something like that. I'd never seen the film on this side, but I was watching like 20 minutes of it with my mom on that side. And then I remember the scenes, you know, when I saw the film on this side. So ideally, if you're having a true experience on that side, you can take the information back. But again, I wish that happened all the time, but a lot of times it's all getting messed up by your physical brain here. So you have to fight through that.
Yeah, I'm reading through the next couple of questions. I think some of this you've already answered, but it seems like even in the astral, individuals aren't advanced enough to project. Do you think in this Discord in your groups we can reach a point where everyone can project consciously and explore together, like an astral army? That's from Time.
It seems like even the other people aren't advanced enough to project. You think in this Discord in your groups we can reach a point where everyone can project consciously? Yeah, I do think so. I think to do it, there has to be a emphasis on getting into an objective reality and not the imagination. Because if it's everyone's own imagination, everyone can be off, you know, la-di-da in some world they created, and it's pointless. I think if everyone can set the intention to be connected with each other in an objective way, then we'll see success doing that. So that's kind of my feeling. I do think a lot can be done in this area, but we have to verify it and make sure it's really happening in this world. It's not happening, in here, and that's the challenge, because I think a lot of people can, not many people can project, and of the people who can project, an even smaller amount of connecting to objective reality, or are conscious of when it's objective reality, or when they are just falling into a dream state. And that's what we have to practice to be able to make a difference in this objective reality, in this consensus reality that we're stuck in or signed up to try to fix. The Earth plane, which is the most fucked up place probably in the multiverse, but here we are.
Well, it looks like Karina is on your Facebook group and is asking about physically attempting to sit up and roll over. So not from a lucid dream state, but from a meditation state. Are we supposed to physically attempt to sit up? Is it something that's supposed to be mental or imagined or visualized? How do I know when I have separated or about to separate, timing of trying to exit the body?
Well, there's a disconnection that happens. You feel certain vibratory feelings in your body, and then for me, my motor function changes to my astral body. And then I have full control of my astral limbs. My legs, my arms are all, I can move them up and down while I'm lying on the bed and seeing my other arms. If that's not happening to you, it means you haven't fully disconnected. So whatever you're working on to try to disconnect, I would say focus again on making sure your body is asleep. Because if your body's not, there's a physiological component to all of this. So the body switches to a paralysis state, and the astral body kind of gains, your consciousness switches to basically the motor function of your astral body, possibly your astral brain. What the main mechanism for your astral body. So if you're not having that, it means you got to work harder to make sure you're disconnected. And if nothing else, you can try to get into a sleep paralysis state with your conscious mind operating. But while I'm doing this, I didn't want to neglect Unplug's question. When attempting to exit the body, am I supposed to physically attempt to sit up, roll over, or is it something that's supposed to be mental, imagined, visualized? And how do I know when I have separated? So my answer is that in my opinion, again, I often dissuade against going into the imagination. For me, it's a physical thing. It's as physical as moving your arm here. It's about, is my mind controlling my astral body or my physical body? Which one is it controlling? So it should be unmistakable when it happens. I don't do it by visualizing it. I do it because there's a physical process that happens. That switch happens. I can feel it. I can now feel my astral body. Now I can move it around. So that's the goal.
It looks like Pawn Sacrifice is asking again, have you gone over any theory as to why people that live in these outer consensus areas, whether they may have lived lives here or not, aren't aware of more outside of their own existence?
Why? If you've gone, let me read it again so I understand. If you've gone over theories why people that live in these outer consensus areas, whether they may have lived lives here or not, aren't aware of more outside of their own existence. Oh, okay, so does this mean people who are living in a non-consensus area permanently, like someone's stuck in a dream, someone's stuck in a lucid dream? I wonder. I don't know if Pawn can respond to that real quick.
Is that right? If I talk on here?
I'm okay with it.
I would just meant it seems like sometimes when you meet people, when you're out of body, they don't really know what's going on outside of their own kind of bubble. It's like whatever the plane of existence they're on, they seem that just they live lives there and they're not aware of more out there than where they are. That's what I was trying to ask.
Yeah, I think that it's part of kind of a consciousness crisis. So unfortunately, a lot of people kind of go through life in a dream in this world, and then they die, and they didn't believe in, let's say, life after death, and so then they don't even know what's happening around them. So because they don't know what's happening around them, they're just going with whatever is right in front of them. They're not questioning anything. And they don't even know that they've died. They don't think that they've died, and they think they're still mortal. They think that they are going to die someday, and they think they're still on the earth. And they just accept everything that's happened to them. They don't think about it. And so you end up with the vast amount of the astral plane basically being people who don't understand themselves. They don't understand that they're dead. They don't understand that they now can have freedom to go and do what they want. They don't understand that they can improve their lives if they want. They don't understand they can quit their astral office job or their astral job at Astral Arby's. God knows I have seen, people working crappy jobs over there. Some people do it because it's their passion, like some people are like, oh, I'm a waitress because, I just love serving people and I love food and that's what I used to do and it makes me happy. And then some people are like, yeah, I hate being an astral pizza delivery man, but it was the only job hiring. It's like there's this split, and it's a consciousness issue, or even I would say a consciousness crisis. And if you want to talk about like if maybe our negative ETs or archons or things that want to exploit us, well, that's what they're exploiting. Is people don't have any. People are clueless. You can fall into cults on that side. You can fall into all kinds of trouble because you don't think that you're dead. You don't know any of this stuff, and you're just doing whatever people tell you to do, whatever is right in front of you. Welcome to the world of the normies.
It's funny you say that, Cyrus, because I just wanted to interject and say one of the things that you said in an interview one time that just had me almost hysterically laughing because it was so random is when you met someone and were on the other side and asked them, what do you mean are there corporations here? And they looked at you like you were kind of crazy because they're like, of course there's corporations on this side and the Afterlife Astral or whatever you want to call that. And I remember that interview and it was pretty entertaining to hear.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. There's corporations. Jurgen talked about there's even higher dimensional corporations. So he went to some like astral office buildings and he actually illustrated them. So clock in, clock out. But
like, can you have belongings on the astral plane like that? Just stay in the astral plane until you go back.
Yeah, you can do that. If I'm there, I can. I'll open up. I'll try to get clues about what my astral self's life is like. So I'll go through his clothing. I'll open up the drawers, be like, okay, so I can see myself buying this, or I'll be like, what are my objects? What are things I'm collecting? So stuff like that. I mean, you can also materialize things, and things will disappear if you materialize them and you forget about it. There's like funky stuff like that happens, but ultimately, I mean, you can have whatever same.
So do you know if the corporations that are on the astral plane are like backed by the same evil that a lot of corporations here are backed by?
I would say some of them are. I think that when we talk about like a so-called cabal or kind of deep state situation, a lot of it's on that side. I think there's governments on this side working with the government on that side, on that deep level, for many purposes. It's like, hey, can you do some espionage for us because they can't see you on this side if you're from that side. And there's a lot of like nefarious things going on. But a company could also just be, a company that started off for making a buck and then it evolved into something that's more like to serve humanity. And so a corporation ultimately becomes like an instrument of like being of service to others. And becoming it's that same dichotomy happening.
And so that's a great answer. Here's the thing. I think you're one of the foremost, I want to say, experts in astral projection in the afterlife aspect, but you talk about it so much and you heavily focus on it. I don't want this question to get lost. Calamity asks, how would you go about finding a deceased family member in the astral? Also, to follow up, how do you know if it's the person themselves and not making a copy of them, for example?
One, if you have any empathic ability, if someone is themselves or not. So there's some people, and look, we all love Tom Campbell, but he was trying to argue that the deceased loved ones we meet are like facsimiles, are not really them, because there's no real like our family members or whoever have actually transcended into like, I don't know, whatever it is. It's really convoluted, and I file a lot of that under nonsense because if you get this feeling with people. if you develop that skill even a little bit, you'll know right away if someone's a family member. And you would know immediately, especially on that side, because we all have this psychic power there where you can all feel other people's consciousness in a way you can't do here. So if there was someone who was not your family member, you would know it immediately, unless you were really blinded to it. So I would say for most people, that's never going to be a problem. Connecting with them is also based on emotion. It's based on a mental link that you have with them, where it should happen automatically. If it's not happening automatically, it would be because that family member is resisting meeting you. And so, I work with like a lot of parents who have lost children and stuff like that. And sometimes you unfortunately get a situation where like the kid of the parent, is they're really stubborn or selfish or whatever the case may be. Like, oh, I don't want to talk to mom. I would say they're carrying around baggage, and then you just end up never connecting with them. So sometimes it doesn't work. But if you had if two people love each other, then many people who have never had an experience, when they finally have experiences, it's going to be because they're with their loved one.
And I guess I'll ask Cyrus, do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah, I would say we can go at least till it's 4:20 my time, till 4:30 or 4:40. It should be fine.
Okay, perfect. We do have a couple more questions. I say, August says, do you take the place of your astral counterpart when we finally pass over?
The answer is yes, and this has been the biggest bugaboo. And I even made this into a question to ask out loud or seek answers about in my second book, because isn't it weird if we pass away and then we just merge back into the astral counterpart? Like are we still who we once were? So I actually posed this question to a physical medium who was channeling a spirit person allegedly. And this was on Zoom, so the guy was in a trance, and his lips and his mouth was moving. He was talking, but presumably he was not conscious, and so presumably this was like a guide or an advanced being. I don't know. He gave me some health advice, which helped me. So I think the dude was real. But the spirit person answered. It's like, no, you have your counterpart there, but when you die, your individual perception is the thing that carries over until you begin to adapt back into maybe a life you had or past or concurrent lives. So it's a gradual process, because I guess if it wasn't, then that would be the issue, because we'd be dying, we'd be we wouldn't have we wouldn't still be us going through that journey. We'd just be getting uploaded all of our memories again. So this could be an issue for people on that side who know us, who know our astral counterparts. But then when the earth plane body dies, and then that person that they know astrally is suddenly going to have amnesia. And I think it's, probably, it kind of sucks for our friends, and it sucks for the life that we were having, because we're going to get the earth plane amnesia is going to come into us on that side. And then we're going to have to readapt and kind of slowly merge back into who we were. That's the answer that I got. Doesn't mean it's true, but that's what I was told.
And so Taylor asked Cyrus, do you think it's normal to have an autonomous astral life like you seem to have on the other side? Or do you think this is a special case which is related to why you had a spontaneous OBE in 2014, which started this chain of APs? Are you like the protagonist in Tenet, traveling towards the inflection point of your physical death in 3D from both ends simultaneously?
At least for the first part I can answer, I would say this is unknown territory, but I would theorize that not everybody has a complete astral parallel life. So if someone has a history of dreaming, and it seems like more than dreams, it seems like you have a life somewhere when you go to sleep at night. Mark Twain would talk about how he would always go to sleep and meet this young girl who was a family member of his, but he could never understand why he'd always dream about the same person in the same places. Kind of ironically, actually, my great-grandfather was a friend of Mark Twain, so great-great-grandfather, I mean. I don't know how that fits in. It's kind of funny. But I have an old picture of Mark Twain and my great-great-grandfather on a boat. They both have the big handlebar mustaches. They're looking really gangster. But I don't mean to be name dropping like that. I just popped into my head. But anyway, so so that's like an example of definitely having that parallel life, and it's it happens to some people, and then there's people, like I said, like they're like, I've only dreamed 12 times in my life, and I was just dreaming nonsense. Possible they don't have that link. And I think if someone has the astral parallel life, it's going to be much easier to project. I don't know how many do and how many don't. Maybe it's like 50-50 or something. I don't really know. I think anyone has the potential to have one. Maybe some people, they just don't. They're just, all of them is just in this body. Maybe. I don't know.
It looks like Mrs. Bigfoot has a responding question. It says, have you ever seen them astral projecting here on Earth? If so, how can you recognize them? Do they look solid like us?
Yes. So this is really funny. I was living in LA. My roommate, my buddy Jason, was in the room across from me. He's had a few experiences too, mostly negative experiences, like when he was in the Marine Corps in Japan. One time, like he was stationed in Japan, and like this entity from the Japanese he was like kicking a Japanese tombstone. You never want to do that. And he woke up to this entity like a sap. He's like draining all the energy out of him, attacking him. Like, he's had a lot of crazy experiences like that, so he knows how to do it or whatnot, right? So anyway, so I went out of my body in my bedroom. I went into his bedroom, and I found him. I don't think he wasn't APing, but he was dreaming. So his body was lying on the bed, and then his astral body was standing outside of his body, and he was talking to himself because he was interacting with people in a dream. So now I was next to him, and I was trying to get his attention to try to wake him up out of the dream so that he'd then be astral projecting, and then we'd be looking at each other face to face normally, like we do anyway. And I wasn't able to wake him up. I interrogated him the next day. It's like, did you dream that I was like shaking your shoulders and trying to wake you up? So it didn't work, but he was definitely there out of his body dreaming. So if he had woken up, then we would have been able to communicate and talk to each other, and he would have remembered it, and it would have been a joint AP. So when you're APing and you're on that, and you're watching someone else AP, you'll just see them, you'll see their body on the bed, and then their duplicate like standing around, like, APing, and you can, it's that simple, and it's that cliche.
That's a great answer too. I've seen the same thing, Cyrus. That's great. Luke asks, have you ever had an alien encounter? If so, how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would. Well, first of all, I lived at an ET hotspot in southern Arizona, so we had the night of the Phoenix Lights. We saw that ship moving from the mountains towards Phoenix. We had people in the government around there who were loosely keeping the secret that they were monitoring these ETs that were beaming in. And we had an abduction experience, all of us, because we were driving back from our other house. 45-minute drive took 3 hours. We don't know why. Only my brother remembers a light coming toward the car. So we know, obviously, we were all abducted. My father used to do CE5 contact with the ETs, and had all these astral trips like on their ships. And they were like Nordic, kind of beautiful looking, human looking ETs. I didn't have those experiences. Closest I've had that I can remember then is my very, very first AP experience is more like when I was in a hospital in Thailand, and I had just had surgery that could have possibly killed me, and then I had this experience when I fell asleep after, where there was these two beautiful looking like women who were with black hair, and they identified themselves as the collective, like an Egyptian goddess of the Nile crocodile. And the reason I say that this is ET, because through probing with mediums and trying to investigate this like Egyptian goddess entity that claims to be like my guide, it was kind of unraveled that they are an Egyptian extraterrestrial civilization. Maybe even ties back into the law of one, like Ra, but they are like this high, very, very high dimensional Egyptian ET, and that, but they manifested as a god or goddess for Egyptians to comprehend them. And so all that stuff, that's a whole rabbit hole. But so in that way, I could extrapolate my experience with them as being an ET experience. But what is ET? What is a higher dimensional being? What are we? It all becomes a big gray area, right?
Absolutely. And Lancer kind of goes off that is saying, well, since people can project, why can't someone confirm it but writing code on a piece of paper and keeping it somewhere where we can't normally see, and then ask the person to read the code on the paper and match the answers?
You can do that. It's just that the issue with that is it's difficult to do it, right? So you can try to set that up. There was just a lot, and I think there were some experiments in the 70s that basically did that, and they were successful at it. It's just that you're dealing with a lot of problems: the inconsistency of having AP experiences, the inconsistency of when you can successfully do it, when you can successfully get out of your body, when you can be in this world and not in the astral equivalent of your home, in which case, it all might get shot, because now you're not even in the same home you're in, but you're on the astral spectrum and everything's mixed up and different. So to do that, there has to be this kind of perfect storm of things happening that would allow it to happen. And you'd have to have very talented people willing to take up so much of their time to try to make it happen. Meanwhile, you could also just remote view the damn thing, and then you might get a hit instantly. But I mean, it is possible. It's just that it's such a difficult design framework. It's why everybody doesn't just do it.
It's a good answer. I guess I'll ask a question just out of curiosity. And some of those who inspired me also to learn outside just the astral projection box that there's a lot more going on here. Were Tom Campbell and Dolores Cannon, who come from kind of different sciences and different walks of life. Have you heard or read their material, either or both of them, and what do you think and how all that fits here?
So yes, the Convoluted Universe, and then also Tom Campbell, like My Big Toe. Look, Tom Campbell's pretty theoretical, and we don't want to get drawn into thinking of someone as a guru. It's a very dangerous thing, because even though Tom Campbell maybe doesn't want to be a guru, people view him as a guru, so they view his theories as the word of God. Excuse me. So when I've questioned things, like there's the facsimile thing, that their loved ones are not really your loved ones; they're blah 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 blah. And even Jurgen, who's a buddy of Tom Campbell's, gave Tom Campbell a little bit of pushback about that. And because Jurgen has a relationship with his mother on that side, it's like, Tom, I'm with you, buddy, but what's going on with these ideas about our loved ones not being who they are? So there's a real danger in putting someone on a pedestal, because especially if someone begins kind of spitballing ideas, which I think Tom does, and I think he's very scientific and very objective, very rational. So it's kind of easy to then turn your critical thinking skills off, because you're thinking, well, I bet everything he says must be true. Don't think that's the case. I think he gets a lot right, and I also think that he gets quite a bit wrong. And the issue with Tom is he doesn't always, at least add conditionals saying, well, maybe this is right. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's like that. It's kind of bad news bears whenever anyone is saying this is the way it is. So we have to just be a little bit mindful about that. And then with Dolores Cannon, she's really coming at this from the perspective of, as a journalist, like reporting, this is what people have told me. This is what people in hypnotized states, this is the info coming back to me. So that's good, because then you can make up your own mind. But the general thread with what Dolores Cannon talks about, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it concerns ETs. It concerns, like, why are we all here? Is there a big movement of souls coming to this planet to try to fix problems? And I think that's true. Probably most of us here fall into that category. So that's my not so straightforward answer.
No, I do appreciate it though, Cyrus. And I guess just based on the time, I'll try to wrap these two questions into one last one.
Okay.
Kai asks, what do you think, why do you think astral projection is so difficult to learn? And Lancer, to kind of go with that, is it possible to like have an OBE and not come back to body? Which is a question of fear that a lot of people tend to ask.
One, why is it so difficult to learn? Because you have to train your mind and consciousness in ways that might not be trained normally. Some people are naturally kind of good at it, or it snaps into place, like me, I guess. And then some people you have to begin from the ground up, and it's you have to reframe everything from sleep to consciousness to a whole lot of stuff. And it's not always easy. It's easier for some people and not others. And it's not fair, but it just seems to be the way it is. But anyone can do it, but some people have a lot longer road to do it. And for Lancer's question, no, it's not possible. Because you're constantly being pulled back into your body. It's like you're projecting almost through your brain here that world. That's why AP is always an imperfect experience. It goes back to what that Indian guy told me, my first AP, which is that you're always going to be kind of tethered to your world here. You're never going to have a perfect experience being fully on this side until you're dead. So what I recommend is, we can learn about that side and learn about our place in the universe, and that materialism is bollocks. And I think that will help us have the strength to live our life here, knowing that whole system and all that manipulation that's in Western civilization, that all of it's a lie, and really this is the way reality actually is. It should lift weights off our shoulders, so we don't have as much depression. We can be strong enough to fulfill those missions that Dolores Cannon talks about.
That's great. And just looking at the time, I guess might as well leave a couple of moments for you to, if you want any parting words, and before you go.
Let's see. Lancer also asked, is it possible to disconnect by will? Great yogis and great powerful people can do that, but don't ask me, because I'm, if they're a level 10, I'm a level 2. So if it's, some people can do that. And parting words would be, it's also what matters is what we're doing in this world too, and we want to get rid of a lot of the fear, and we do want to help this planet and get through those old paradigms, bring us into some kind of a new age. And it's probably not going to be like David Wilcock says. We're probably not going to shoot through our roofs and get raptured into an alien spaceship. I'm sorry to say, but the way it actually works is that gradually over time, people become more aware, and we begin living more peacefully, and we start integrating psychic abilities into our culture. We replace materialism. We bring in, new technologies. We start to, kind of get a little bit back up to speed with those ET races. And, this could take months, years, centuries. I don't know. That kind of is this idea of ascension or whatever. So we're not shooting into any spaceships. I'm sorry, David, or a lot of those concepts. But we are, we have to facilitate a path toward the way that I described it, because if we don't, I also think the civilization is doomed. So that's our options. We can get out of that darkness and catch up to speed, get the power back, and practice psychic abilities, practice astral projection, build a relationship with that side, build a relationship with people on that side, kind of unite this and advance as a civilization. Or we can just continue to be controlled, continue to be lab rats, continue to be at the other end of the spear of like these negative or Luciferian groups. And so that is in a nutshell, what I think, what the collectives and what young people, why you're drawn to this kind of stuff, and keep on it, but also focus on your life too. Whatever, stay in school, as long as it's not a horrible major that's brainwashing you. If you have a passion, pursue it. I do traveling. Look, I have a book called How to Quit Your Job. I have a book called How to Make Money While Traveling. I've lived out on a backpack a lot, been all over Asia, all over Europe. Do stuff you're passionate about. Focus on this world and your life. Don't give up on those things. And then finally, just some points in about reaching me. So you can, of course, find me at afterlifetopics.com, cyruskirkpatrick.com, Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics on YouTube. You can book consultations with me. I have a patron group, so people who join the $30 level on Patreon. We do classes twice a week to go over all these types of things together, and then sometimes those ideas end up on the YouTube channel. Also, patrons, they get free astral projection coaching with me. That's included. So we'll talk on Zoom. So that's if you want to become a patron. Otherwise, you can also join the Facebook group. I have a little microscopic Reddit channel, Afterlife Topics. You can check that out as well. And so those are some ways to get in touch or get involved. And I'll take it back to you. So thank you for having me.
Well, I'd like to, just on behalf of the whole community, thank you, Cyrus, for coming. This is a great kind of introduction to who Cyrus Kirkpatrick is, and all the wonderful experiences you've had, and certainly sharing that with us, taking time out of your day to do that. We'd love to have you back. So, please get in touch with Gene, myself, any of the admins, really, if you'd ever like to come back and share more of your experiences traveling, both physically and metaphysically. So we appreciate you coming, and thank everyone else for being here. And we'll stay on the line if anybody else has any other questions.